What's going on, family? I'm Scrapbook Boxing. The Museum of the Forgotten Fisticuffs series will continue its conversation with you concerning the complete history of boxing. Now, on the night of December 3rd, 1926, Irish World Welterweight Champion Tory Bulldog Mickey Walker will win a very suspicious and controversial decision over the first Black World Middleweight Champion Theodore Tiger Flowers in 10 rounds. The contest took place at the Chicago Coliseum in Chicago, Illinois. Mickey Walker was stepping into the ring weighing 155 pounds. Theodore Tiger Flowers was stepping into the ring weighing 159 pounds. He had 11,000 anticipated audience members that would gross $80,000 for this contest. Now, the referee was Benny Yeager. He was known as the Tipton Slasher. He would have a record of 81 total bouts, 52 wins, 8 losses, 30 knockouts, and he'd be stopped himself. The reason why I'm bringing up the career of Benny Yeager, who was the referee for this contest, because not only was he a very good referee, but I believe he was a very good fighter as well. In 1900, he would defeat young Corbett II. That same year, he would draw with George Dixon. He would lose to Ben Jordan, who was the British featherweight champion, in 1902. In 1902, he would defeat Abe Attell. He would lose to Kid Herman and Monty Baldwin. He would lose to Packy McFarlane. Now, Matty Baldwin was a very, very good fighter himself. He was a champion. So, Benny Yeager, I believe, was a very good referee. I don't think he was bought out by the mob, but I do believe, what are you going to do? Mickey Walker just unfortunately had Jack Kearns in his corner, and Jack Kearns did business with Al Capone. So, he let the chips fall where they may on that one, but Theodore Tiger Flowers, no way he lost that fight. Many members in the audience stated he didn't lose the fight. But you're dealing with Jack Kearns, and Jack Kearns dealt with Al Capone and many other mob members. So unfortunately for Theodore Tiger Flowers, he was in the middle of that. Now, Flowers fought warriors such as Kid Norfolk, June 5th, 1922, at the Ponce de Leon Park in Atlanta, Georgia. 1922, and I've said this many times, to me, it was one of the greatest years of boxing in the entire history of the game. We went through 1922. We will continue to go through 1922 just to refresh our memories about that year. But it was just as important to me as 1940 was, as 1951 was. Very impressive year was 1922. Theodore Tiger Flowers was also in the ring with Jamaica Kid 8 times between 1922 and 1925. He would take on Panama Joe Gans December 19th, 1920 for the colored middleweight championship title. He fought him between August 1921 and May 1923. He would also take on Maxie Rosenblum for the World Light Heavyweight Championship title. October 15th, 1926, July 4th, 1927, and November 9th, 1927. Now, Theodore Tiger Flowers would take on Lee Anderson, who was known as the Harlem Bully. They would fight the first fight for the colored light heavyweight championship title, and Lee Anderson would defeat Theodore Tiger Flowers. But Flowers would knock out Johnny Wilson, who was a former world middleweight champion, on the night of December 9th, 1924. He would stop him in 3 rounds in New York's Madison Square Garden. Tiger Flowers could fight. He was tall, he was a southpaw, very hard puncher. He was a religious man. And unfortunately, on the night of December 3rd, 1926, he would lose his title after becoming the first black man to win that championship title, middleweight championship, to the Toy Bulldog Mickey Walker. News announcement. Theodore Tiger Flowers didn't lose that fight. Now, let me add some flavor to this conversation. Theodore Tiger Flowers, as much as we're talking about him and how great of a fighter he was, and he was, but he would be knocked out in the second round by Sam Langford at the Ponce de Leon Park in Atlanta, Georgia. Guess when that happened? June 5th, 1922, the same year that I told you was a very, well, I wouldn't say controversial, but it was a great year for boxing. Now, Sam Langford, just to refresh our memory about how good of a fighter he was to justify the loss of Theodore Tiger Flowers. Sam Langford's last fight to the finish bout was in 1923 with Sam McVeigh for the Mexican Heavyweight Championship title. That was his last bout for the finish fights of Sam Langford. Now, Langford would face fighters such as George Godfrey for the colored Heavyweight Championship title, Theodore Tiger Flowers for the World Well, not for the World Middleweight Championship title, but Theodore Tiger Flower was a World Middleweight Champion when he would win that title in 1926. These two men, Langford and Flowers, would face each other in 1922. Harry Wells for the Colored Heavyweight Championship title 22 times. Kid Norford, who was a Colored Light Heavyweight Champion. Sam McVeigh, who was a Colored Heavyweight Champion, they fought each other 15 times. Joe Jeanette was a Colored Heavyweight Champion, they fought each other 14 times. Jack Blackburn, he would face him 6 times. Barbados Demon Joe Walcott, one time in 1904 for the World Welterweight Championship title. It would go 15 rounds as a draw. The Baltimore Demon, young Peter Jackson, fought him 6 times, but he would fight him for the vacant Colored Middleweight Championship title. He'd also be in the ring with Dave Holly. Now, Dave Holly, tell you a little bit about him. He was known as the Battle Royale Broadway Kid. He was born July 25th, 1912. And what was amazing about him, to be very honest with you, was the fact that he was such an underrated fighter. And he's so underrated that they have different dates for him. Now, they also have him as being born March 2nd, 1881 in Westchester, Pennsylvania. He said he died July 25th, 1912 in Camden, New Jersey. He stood 5 foot 8.5 inches. He was a lightweight champion in the colored division. He had a record of 76 wins, 30 losses, and 30 knockouts. He had a 72.5-inch reach, fought from 1900 to 1910. He was in the ring with fighters such as Joe Gans. October 14th, 1902. He fought him again December 7th, 1903. He was in the ring with Jack Blackburn, May 4th, 1903. He would win one and lose one to him. He'd be in the ring with Belfield Walcott, December 30th, 1903. Kid Williams, June 2nd, 1904. Dixie Kidd, October 15th, 1904. Sam Langford, November 4th, 1904. Joe Walcott, September 10th, 1904. And January 25th, 1906. George Cole, December 17th, 1904. Ruff Turner, December 17th, 1904. Jeff Clark, the Joplin Ghost, January 13th, 1910. So once again, they have him as being born March 2nd, 1881 in Westchester, Pennsylvania, and dying July 25th, 1912. He was 31 years of age at the time of his death, and he would reside in Camden, New Jersey. He would suffer an infection from a dog bite, and unfortunately for him, that infection was spread throughout his body, and he would die. So a great fighter was Dave Holly, but I just wanted to give you somewhat of a background of Theodore Tiger Flowers, really, by some of the opponents that he faced and some of the opponents that his opponents faced. So Theodore Tiger Flowers, shout out to him, great fighter. Now, like I said, Theodore Tiger Flowers and Mickey Walker was a very controversial contest, and many historians that I've spoken to over the years, in the last 25 to 30 years, all had the same opinion. I'm going to be meeting up with one, I think, in 2 weeks, and that will be a very interesting conversation, and we'll be talking about that as well. Here you have Gleb and Mickey Walker. These two were characters if you ever saw one. Now, January 21st, 1927, 21-year-old Fidel Barber would defeat 29-year-old Elkie Clark in 12 rounds. He would win the vacant World Flyweight Championship title in New York's Madison Square Garden in front of 16,000 spectators. Clark would retire January 26, 1932. 1927. Would also Newsboy Brown upset Frankie Gennaro in 10 rounds. Yeah, Brown would upset Gennaro in 10 rounds, and that was amazing as well. Now, Fidel Barber was born September 29th, 1905 in Bronx, New York. He died October 2nd, 1981. He was 76 years of age at the time of his death, and he would reside in Los Angeles, California. He stood 5'3". He was a flyweight with a 66-inch reach, fought from 1924 to 1933. He had a total bout career of 90 bouts, 69 wins, 15 losses, and 16 knockouts. He had 44 total bouts with 41 wins as an amateur with 1 loss, 18 knockouts. I met Fidel Barber, obviously later on in his life, but it was very interesting to meet these fighters over the years because you get to talk to them and you see where they're coming from, so that you can kind of match what kind of fighter they were, how they thought about life, what their disposition was. And I've always had fun judging a fighter based on how he spoke to me, how he lived his life, what was important to him at that time. It's very interesting. March 3rd, 1927. Boston Gob, Jack Sharkey was stopped light heavyweight Mike Mateague in 12 rounds in New York's Madison Square Garden. Now, to get back to Fidel Barber for one moment. Between the ages of 14 and 16, he would win the vacant World Flyweight Championship crown. I thought that was very interesting. He would win 25 bouts before winning the AAU Flyweight Pacific Contest, the Flyweight Championships. May 20th, 1925, he would defeat Petey Cerrone for the National AAU Championship title. Now, Fidel Barber was a phenomenal fighter. He fought in that tournament in 29 when you had fighters such as, and I talked about them, Frankie Gennaro, and you had Midget Wargas. You had, who was he now? Eladio Valdez, black belt. Almost lost my train of thought for a second. But the thing with Peter Cerrone, he would become the featherweight champion when he would defeat Freddie Miller, and he would lose his title in 37 to Henry Armstrong. So he goes a long way in the amateurs and the professionals. He would retire after losing to Sammy Ingat. I'm speaking of Peter Cerrone. So Fidel Barber has a very good pedigree. Now, Elkie Clark, his name was William Clark. He was born January 4th, 1898, in Bridgeton, Scotland. He died September 22nd, 1956. He was 58 years of age at the time of his death, and he would reside in Glasgow, Scotland. He stood 5'3". He was a flyweight, had a 65.5-inch reach, had a record of 47 total bouts, 30 wins, 12 losses, and 20 knockouts. And he fought from 1921 to 1927. He'd be in the ring with fighters such as Kid Kelly. Fought for Unified British Boxing Board of Control in the EBU, European Boxing Union Commonwealth British Empire Flyweight Championship title. It's a mouthful. It was vacated by Jimmy Wild. Jimmy Wild was an outstanding flyweight champion. He would lose his title to Pancho Villa. Amazing career these men would have during that time. March 25th, 1927, Charles Butt Taylor. Charles Butt Taylor was 23 years old. He would take on Tony Canzoneri, who was 18 years old at that time. He would draw with him in 10 rounds for the vacant NBA Bantamweight Championship strap. They fought at the Coliseum in Chicago, same place that Mickey Walker would fight Theodore Tiger Flowers. Referee was Joe Chowinski, who was a Jewish heavyweight, very good fighter he was. He was a promoter, was held to the famous $4,000 belt studded with diamonds and pearls and jewels. Charles Taylor had a record of 87 wins, 16 losses, 12 draws, and 25 knockouts. Tony Canzoneri had a record of 34 wins, 1 loss, and 4 draws with 9 knockouts at that time. Charles Bud Taylor's name was the Blonde Terror, or the Terre Haute. He was born July 22nd, 1903 in Terre Haute, Indiana. He would die March 9th, 1962. He was 58 years of age at the time of his death. 58 years of age at the time of his death. And he would reside in Terre Haute, Indiana. He stood 5'5.5" He was a bantamweight with a 66-inch reach. He fought from 1920 to 1931. He had 100 total bouts, 70 wins, 22 losses, and 37 knockouts. Being in the ring with fighters such as California Joe Lynch, Midget Smith, Eddie Shay, Abe Goldstein, Chick Schultz, Ignacio Fernandez, Santiago Zorrilla. He fought fighters such as Pancho Villa, Memphis Powell Moore, Benny Bass, Al Singer, Goldie Hess, Johnny Vaca, and Joey Sangor, Tony Canzoneri was born November 6, 1908 at Slendale, Louisiana. He would die December 9th, 1959 in New York. He was 51 years of age at the time of his death. He stood 5'4" as lightweight, had a 65-inch reach, fought from 1925 to 1939. He had a total bout career of 171 bouts, 137 wins, 24 losses, 44 knockouts, 10 draws. And he was stopped only once in his career. He being in the ring with fighters such as Charles Bud Taylor and Jimmy McLaurin, Jackie Kid Berg, Frankie Click, Johnny Dundee, and Benny Bass, just to name a few. He was also in the ring with Barney Ross, Jimmy McLaurin. Great fighter was Tony Canzoneri. I have him ranked number 9, along with Benny Leonard and the Scotch Wap Johnny Dundee, and my boxing rankings. I don't know why I can't talk today. I'm Scrapbook Boxing, Museum of the Forgotten Fisticuff series. All great fights and all great fighters will never be forgotten on my channel. I will continue in the next video with the complete history of boxing. Thanks for watching. Be well. Peace. Gotta get some water.